Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm super excited to do a video for you. It's been a long time since I posted any kind of video. I haven't crafted in a while. I've been so busy with work and school and mom life, but I am excited to do one for you. And I figured I would do a video today over one of the top questions that I tend to get, and that's what supplies do I need to get started in resin, or what supplies do you have when you're working with resin? Well, I figured why not do a quick video of some of the things that you might need if you want to start dipping your toes into resin crafting. Now, I will say my best advice if you're starting out in resin crafting, start with a starter kit. It's the perfect thing that you can buy that one, isn't too expensive, and two, has everything that you need in it to get started. My favorite brand of resin is the Let's Resin brand. And on their website, they actually have several different starter kit options that are really good for you to maybe get started in. You can also look on Amazon. They have different resin starter kits available. So that might be a good place. To start if you want to try resin crafting. But I will go ahead and answer what do I have? What do I have here in my craft room on my surface that I use each time that I get started with resin? So let me turn on this light. That didn't make a big difference, but well, first off, you're gonna need resin. And if you decide to do the starter kit that I had mentioned, it's gonna come with a smaller bottle of your resin. And then that way too, maybe if it's not for you, then you didn't buy a big bottle and now you have a bunch of resin just sitting around. So for me, again, if you've watched any of my videos, I swear by the Let's Resin brand. Again, it's my favorite. It's easy to use. So I have big bottles of it. This is a 0.75 gallon of both part A, and then this is part B, but I have part A as well. I use it so much that I buy the bigger bottles. Now, the Let's Resin brand, this resin in particular is a 1-to-1 ratio. And you can see here, it says it's 1-to-1. Well, what does that mean? Well, when you mix your resin, part A and part B, you're gonna mix an equal amount of part A into part B. Easy, right? So if I'm gonna mix 5 ounces of part A, I'm gonna mix 5 ounces of part B, and I'm gonna mix them together. So I don't have to one weigh some of your resin. You have to put on a scale and actually do it by volume and by weight. Some resin is maybe 2-to-1 ratio. Well, that's way too much math for me. I would rather something easy, and that's why I prefer a 1-to-1 ratio. This is also a medium viscosity resin, so it's a little bit thicker than some of your more fluid type resins that you might use on like a tabletop or something like that. That will be a little bit thinner, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But this is the resin that I use. And again, if you're interested in trying some of the Let's Resin products, they do have a bunch of stuff available on their website. They even have some really cute molds. And then also things that you can put in your resin, like glitter and inks and fun stuff like that. Okay, so resin, we talked about that. Now, what do I have here on my table? Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to talk about your safety equipment. I do have rubber gloves that I keep here in my craft room. In fact, I have rubber gloves in the kitchen and stuff like that, but rubber gloves is good to protect your skin when you're working with resin. I will be 100% transparent. I don't always use rubber gloves because I don't, especially if I'm working with some kind of intricate mold, or maybe I'm putting little things in my resin, the rubber gloves do get in the way. So I'm not gonna lie, oftentimes I don't use gloves. Now, I will use the alcohol on a paper towel to clean my hands off if I get resin on my hands. And it's not an issue, it hasn't bothered my skin, but you should always consider your safety equipment. Something else to consider is a respirator mask. I'll go ahead and post some links to different respirator masks that you can potentially look at purchasing if you're interested in resin. I'll put that on my Amazon storefront page for you. It's important to note that resin, as it is in part B or part A, doesn't give off toxic fumes, but when you mix the resin together, the chemical process of them mixing together can release some fumes that can be harmful. So it's really important to wear like a respirator type mask to protect yourself from those potentially harmful fumes. All right, so now that we've got the safety equipment out of the way and we've talked about what different types of resin, what do I have here on my table? Well, I have a bunch of things. I have cleanup stuff. First, let's talk about what am I going to use to protect my surface, because resin can be a very messy craft. Well, if you have a silicone mat, you can actually, these are pretty cheap, but a silicone mat will protect your surface. And the great thing about silicone is that when resin dries, it doesn't stick to silicone. In fact, when it dries, I could just peel it right off, the resin. I could just peel it off and throw it away. And that's the reason why your resin molds are silicone. This is a silicone coaster mold. So when my resin dries in here, I can just pop it out and that's my finished product. So your resin molds should be silicone, right? Be careful because you don't want to buy a mold that isn't made of silicone and now you've poured resin into it and you can't get it out, right? So having a silicone mat down on my surface is what I use. But keep in mind, if you're first starting, you can put newspaper down, you can put paper towels down, and just throw those away when you clean up. You don't have to invest in anything in particular. The silicone mat is just something handy if resin crafting is for you and you continue to do it. Okay, so alcohol. I have alcohol here all the time. And why? Why do I have alcohol? Well, it's perfect for cleaning. In fact, I have two different types. I have my 70%. 70% is what I use to clean my surface with. Maybe I'll use it to clean out my mold ahead of time. I use it to clean my hands when I get resin on my hands. But it's perfect for cleanup. So 70% I use for cleanup. And then I also have 91% isopropyl alcohol. Now, the 91, if you think about it, 91 is going to evaporate faster because it's 91% alcohol. So the 91 is really good for popping bubbles because when you pour resin, if air gets trapped into it, it's going to create a bubble. Well, having 91% in a small spray bottle like this is just a travel bottle that I bought from like Walgreens. I fill this with my 91%. And if you've watched any of my tutorial videos, you will often see me spraying this in my mold before I pour my resin, and that will help pop bubbles that air might be trapped underneath. And then I also like to spray it on top of my resin to pop any bubbles on the surface. Alcohol is magic for popping bubbles. So again, this is just a cheap little spray bottle, and I put my 91% in here for popping bubbles. My 70% I use for cleanup. A lot of times I will saturate, I have paper towels in my craft room at all points in time. My favorite is the ones that you can tear apart into little small squares, and I'll have me a stack of squares on my surface, and sometimes I'll saturate my paper towels and I'll use them to clean my hands or even my surface. So alcohol is a must for me right here on my surface. Something else, well, you need something to mix the resin in, right? Because we talked about it, part A and part B. Well, you're going to have to measure that out somehow, right? Well, I have measuring cups. These are plastic measuring cups. These in particular are 8-ounce measuring cups. They're perfect for me just to eyeball. If I mix 3 ounces of part A, I'm going to pour in 3 ounces of part B. Super easy to use. Now, if you're going to do a large resin project or maybe even a big pour where you're pouring resin over a surface, you might want to consider bigger measuring cups. but I usually don't pour anything large. A lot of times I will pour in layers. So having 8-ounce cups for me is perfect. Now, as you progress in your crafting journey, maybe you want to work on small projects, or maybe you even want to mix maybe like less than 1 ounce of resin. You can also look into the measuring cups. These are just medicine measuring cups. I use these quite a bit, especially if I'm making a small project and I don't want to waste any resin, because resin is expensive. So I don't like wasting. So if I'm doing something small, these are perfect for measuring really small amounts. So how do you mix your resin? Well, I use popsicle sticks. These are cheap and you can reuse them. In fact, you can clean these with your 70% alcohol, let it dry, and then you can reuse it for your future resin projects. So having a jar of popsicle sticks on hand for me works best, and this is what I use. You don't have to invest in any kind of expensive silicone sticks. Nothing. Popsicle sticks works just fine. Now, as you progress in your resin crafting, you can look into some of the silicone tools. These are really good if you're putting things in your resin. Maybe you want to move some things around. And the good thing about them is the tips are silicone. So once the resin dries, all you have to do is peel it off and throw it away. I have these on hand because I do some pretty intricate things in my resin, or I'll put things in it. And these are perfect for working with resin. And then I guess lastly, you just need to find you a mold. Find you something that you're interested in. Are you interested in trying maybe making some coasters? Like I said, my favorite coaster molds are these. And then that way when they come out, they have a rim. I actually have one right here. They have a rim, and they make the perfect coaster. That way your cup doesn't go sliding off. So I make coasters with this one quite often. And when I first started out making a lot of coasters, I had bought these are just cake silicone molds that you can find on Amazon. And these are okay for making coasters too. They just don't have the rim. But find you a project that you want to start out with. Maybe it's a fun design. They have frog molds, they have turtles. You can find skull. I have a skull mold here. In fact, this was one of the skulls that I had made. It's actually a shaker, and you can see the glitter contents inside of it. And I even painted a tree on the outside. But this was a fun project to make. So you can find cool little things that might interest you as you progress in your resin journey. You can even find little teeny skull molds. But find you something that you might want to try as you start out. Again, those starter kits, they might come with a mold. And they might come with some different things that you can use to color your resin, or maybe glitter and stuff to put in them. Which brings me to my next point. I get asked, what can I use in my resin? You can use so many different things, and that's the creative and fun part about working with resin, is that you can color resin. You can put mica powder. Mica powder is a pigmented powder that will turn your resin whatever color that you decide to use. You can use, this is alcohol ink. Alcohol ink is like a translucent type color, and it has a pretty cool reaction when it spreads in the resin. You can use pigment. Pigment's going to make it more of a solid color. There's also something called the mica powders, like I talked about, but then there's also chameleon colored powders, and these are pretty cool because when you mix them in your resin, you can actually see like the chameleon effect, where it might, you turn it a certain way and it's blue, and then you turn it the other way and it's green. So, you know, the possibilities are endless with what you can put in resin. I love doing beach type projects where I put real sand in my resin, maybe shells. You can put glass shards. In fact, this coaster that I just showed you guys, this is glass shards that I put in resin. So it was a really cool project to play with. But the sky is the limit when it comes to things you can put in your resin. You can do glitter, all sorts of things. If you watch some of my tutorial videos, you'll see that I use napkins a lot because they are the perfect design. They are not heavy, they don't really move in your resin projects. So if you're interested in trying a fun and easy thing and they turn out really nice, you should check out one of my tutorial videos on making napkin coasters. Now keep in mind, I see it a lot where people put things in their resin that might have like a water content. That is not something that you typically want to do. Like they might put candy or something that you could actually eat, like cookies in resin. I've seen some pretty funky things that people put in resin, and although that is pretty cool, I think over time that might change the way the resin looks. Maybe it'll change the color of the resin. If there's any kind of water content, you don't want to add those type of things into your resin, okay? Because resin and water don't work well together. So the best thing to do when you're deciding on what you're going to experiment with and what you want in your resin is to choose things that are more of a solid object that doesn't have any water content, if that makes sense. But again, once you get into your resin journey and maybe this is something that you really want to do, there's other things that you can invest in. There's automatic mixers, there's heating mats that can help heat up your resin, and make it harden faster. There's bubble removing machines. Now, I don't have any of those things. The one thing that I did invest in after I decided that I really enjoyed working with resin was a leveling table, because I noticed when I was pouring my projects that the desk that I was working on was not level. And if you decide to start to sell your projects, your products, and you want them to look professional, you definitely want them to be even. So investing in this little leveling table was perfect for me, but that's really the only thing that I've invested in. But again, if you're just starting out, maybe just doing a starter kit is probably for you. So I think we've covered everything that I typically have here at my desk when I work with resin. If there's a project that you're interested in, or maybe you have a question you want to ask, please put it in the comment box. I'd be more than happy to do a video on some of the different things that I've tried, maybe something you're interested in, or maybe something you want to test out. Well, let me test it for you, so that way you don't have to worry about it. Again, thank you for tuning into my channel. If you like this video and maybe you've looked through some of my other things, definitely leave me a comment, a like, and maybe a subscribe, and follow me on my resin journey. But again, thank you for being here, and I hope that you come back.